Thank you for joining us. This is Paul Wilson.
Chris Emke.
Jean-Paul Vaillant.
Oh, that's right. We got a third co-host for today's episode. And of course, you're listening to the Diesel Performance Podcast. Jean-Paul, or JP as we all know you. How the hell are you, bud?
I'm doing pretty good.
JP comes to us from Calibrated Power's Turbo Send It Studios department. You are the coordinator down there who has really helped get the Stealth Series turbo manufacturing program up to pace.
To put it lightly.
Yeah. To as the understatement of the year. Yes. So great job. Great job. Congratulations.
I appreciate that, guys. Thank you.
No problem.
To look at the timeline, right? And I mean, Paul, we can speak a little bit on this. So this is before JP's, arrival.
Right.
A couple of years ago, we decided to basically take on turbo manufacturing in-house. We wanted to grow that side of the business. We wanted to make sure quality control was in check. We wanted to have an R&D department for turbos, which we can prove now, shit works. And then JP comes in. And he comes into the organization, and he was doing a great job, but he had this attention to detail that I wish I could have.
You're being nice because he's here.
No.
It was obnoxious attention to detail. He's so obsessed with detail. We all wanted to kill you and hug you. Well, I don't know if that's a normal thing for a coworker.
To backtrack, because I don't want Nick to get mad at me too much, but Nick would be embarrassed if I brought a customer. If a customer came from out of state and he wanted to see a tour of the shop, he refused to let anyone go into the turbo bay because at the time there was no structure. Right? It was just like, we need this, we need this, we need this. JP comes in there, I'll lead off the fucking floor of that thing now.
Oh yeah.
And all of the housings, just all of the components, the pieces. He's done a great job, and yes, he is in front of me, but this is stuff I say behind his back.
This is true. Yeah.
It's gorgeous back there.
No, it is. It is. It's a total transformation. It's made huge strides. Okay, wanted to give you guys a couple of quick updates. Last week, Chris and I did the ride along in my new X5.
Yeah, dude. I felt like a baller.
It felt great until 2 days ago when I was driving home, and I was like, man, it's got this little noise in the back. And then I was coming into work yesterday, and I'm like, dude, this noise is obnoxious. So I'm doing 45, and I can hear like voom, 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 voom. And then I let off like no throttle and let it coast at 45 miles an hour, and it felt like a tire was going to fall off. Bringing it in the shop, I tell the guys, like, hey, I don't know if I got a wheel bearing out or I got, brake sticking, but something's fucked up in the back. They're like, oh, it's all-wheel drive. We'll look into it. Literally come and get me 20 minutes later. They're like, dude, your wheels almost fell the fuck off. Yeah. So with these aluminum rims, whoever the last person to take them off did not torque them down properly. And it snapped 2 of the lug studs, or 3 of the lug studs on different tires. It backed out 5 of them overall. So literally one of my back passenger tire only had 2 lug nuts holding it on.
I witnessed it.
Yeah. Fucking pissed, dude. I was pissed about this.
So for all the listeners, Paul gets this car. It is a nice SUV. It's gorgeous. And he comes in and he's talking about his negotiating skills and bragging about it, which was a good story.
It worked.
And then a week later, you see this and you're like, yeah, no wonder they let it go as cheap as they did.
Yeah.
Joke's on you.
Yeah, true story.
It's going to be fixed.
Yeah, that's it, man. Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, it was less than $100 in parts to get all new lug studs for it. The guys are throwing them on tonight. No big deal. Yeah. It will be okay. But that's a shout out there. So I think a lot of guys who have had aluminum rims know after so long of driving it and maybe not just 2,000 miles, because I certainly wasn't at 2,000 miles since the tires had been off. But after a period of time, you need to go back and retorque them. Just double check your shit.
It's little things, So back in school, we had what's called a heavies program. So I got my CDL in high school. Yeah. And we worked on diesel engines my junior, senior year. That's how I got into diesels.
Brag.
Sorry. It was awesome. I had a really good second half of my high school career. Anyways. One of the things that my teacher, his name was Mr. Kerrigan, would always talk about is be aware of the vehicle itself. I never, up until that point, I never checked oil. I went off of miles, 3,000-4,000 miles, oil change depending on what it was. Coolant, what the fuck checks that? Graduate high school, get it my second gen Dodge, my 01, and I had a pop head gasket, didn't know at the time, and I go to check the oil one day, and I lost a gallon of oil, right? Well, the oil was going into my cooling system.
Of course. Yeah, right.
And it got really bad really fast. The motor was trashed. The truck was a piece of crap at that point. And maybe it could have been Maybe it could have been prevented a little bit if I was a little bit more.
Yeah, you probably could have been salvaged more out of the engine if you would have caught it sooner.
So now, like my car, every time I take it out, I check fluids before I take it out.
Yeah,
every time.
I'm one to every time I fill up, I check fluids.
In the truck.
JP, you're crazy about detail. How often do you check the fluids? Because you got a 6.4.
I have a 6.4, a 7.3 liter, and a Fusion.
So it's safe to say you're a Ford guy. You're a blue oval enthusiast, to say the least.
Just a little bit.
I mean, you name your trucks.
I do.
Yep.
Let's hear them.
So one is not so embarrassing. The F-250, which is a 1995, I named that Louis.
And it looks like a Louis.
No
It's a
particular
guy's
reason.
name?
Louis.
You named your truck after a guy?
All my diesel trucks are going to be guys.
So you
till the day
ride-
Because they
die.
work hard.
Okay.
All
I
my
had a
diesel
couple other
trucks.
ways to go with this, like, so you ride
Well,
guys.
this is a family
but I
show.
get it. Yeah. No, I didn't go there. I didn't go there. I said I was going to, but I didn't.
I know, because it's a family show. All right, JP, what's the Blue Devil's name?
Contrary to popular belief, if you do the maintenance procedures with the 6.4 liter, in my experience, I've owned two. The blue one's named Rogan because he's rock solid like Joe Rogan is.
Guys, for anyone who's never met JP, you would completely understand. I love it. And how about the Fusion? What's the Fusion's name?
You know, that car's kind of plain. It doesn't have a name yet.
No, name it Lance.
Lance.
Yeah, or Stan.
Ooh, Stan.
That's a nice
Actually,
one.
I like Stan.
Yeah.
I think Stan could stick.
A gray
That's a good
Fusion. I like that.
one. It's all right. It's got Bluetooth, so
We've hit a new low point that somebody told me 6.4s are good and nobody balked at them. And secondly, we're naming fucking Ford Fusions on Diesel Performance podcast now.
It is also Friday the 13th.
It is officially. That's it.
forgot about that.
Official mic
Welcome
drop.
to Friday the 13th episode where we name Ford Fusions.
All right. Well, we'll get more into that
Okay,
here, right?
yes.
So what's today's topic, Paul?
Today's topic, Duramax turbos.
And we're going to get into the do's, the don'ts, what to get, what not to get, depending on the setup. We're just going to talk about Duramax turbos.
Absolutely. But before we do, and speaking of do's and don'ts,
Who pays the bills?
yeah, let's talk about Exergy Performance.
Exergy's got a lot of do's and don'ts, too.
Guys, we love Exergy Performance, and you probably know that if you've ever heard an episode, because even before they were an official sponsor, we still talked about them all the time. The guys over there are awesome. Randy, Rick, Rob, and everybody else that you're going to meet, Harvey, and everybody else that you're going to interact with there. Top of the line customer service and absolutely unquestionable top of the line products.
Man, they're not even next to us and you're talking highly.
I know, right? But it's true. It's just like I'd love to dog on and be like, oh, those guys are assholes, but like for real, like I love those guys.
They've gotten me out of a couple scenarios. They're good people.
True story. And they've answered every question I've ever asked.
Yeah.
No matter how much I really didn't want to know the answer.
And they very rarely say, like trying to buy themselves time, you know?
No,
like
no.
they're very witty, very knowledgeable people.
The only time they slow down what they're saying is when they're like, I love you'll hear this if you talk to Randy. I'm told that I'm too technical, and I'm trying to dumb this down for morons like you. He won't use those words, but that's my recap.
But if you
on
also
it.
met him in person and you understand his demeanor and his character,
oh yeah,
great. You're not going to take it offensively.
For sure.
What I like, I'm just going to go right into the do. I don't care. I'm going to interrupt you for once.
Do it.
It goes really well with what our topic is today.
Almost like somebody planned it.
Yeah, right. So when guys are calling in, they call into the shop, you're doing your research, and you buy injectors, right? You want to be able to match the injector to the turbocharger that you're looking to go with, or the desired horsepower that you're looking to go after. Yes, there are some scenarios you might want to go a little bit bigger or not, or something along those lines, but within reason, you want to have a properly matched setup.
Yeah. I think that speaks highly of everything we're going to talk about today is like your total setup. What is your total setup? So guys who run 100 over injectors on stock turbos, stock trans, it doesn't make any sense. You're not getting anything out of those injectors. They're hurting you more than helping you. Guys who are running 30 overs because they're going to get better fuel mileage. Never been my case. My math doesn't work that way, but if yours does, great.
Well, the bank account's lighter, so your pockets are lighter. So when you're driving,
so you can spend less on fuel. Because less weight.
You have less money in your pocket, so it's less to drive.
No, your bank account's in your pocket, right?
Yeah. Well, the wallet, the cards, the cash. It's all right.
Yeah.
I had a lug nut break earlier, so. What's the don't, Paul?
The don't is don't remove your stock fuel filter unless you have to.
But I just bought a fast system, and I put it on my truck. I don't want to spend $40 on a fuel filter every 10,000 miles, so why wouldn't I take it off?
literally go buy a Honda Civic. If you're for what $10
40. It's 40. It's a $45 filter.
$45 filter every 10,000 miles.
I'm just saying that's a lot of money to spend every 10K.
Quit playing. You'd be driving a Civic if that was true. Number one. So I don't want to hear the fuel filter cost thing. It might leak. That's another thing I don't want to hear. That doesn't make any sense. The more filtration you have before your injectors, the longer your injectors are going to last.
Yeah,
that's not a rule to life. That's not like a law of physics. But it's a truth that I think we all understand.
And under
agree
certain
with.
circumstances and application, the factory fuel filter being removed makes sense.
Dude, listen, if it's leaking and you already have a FAS on it, sure.
Yeah.
Like it's leaking, I'm probably not going to repair it. Like that seems dumb to me because the fuel filter to leak kit's cheap for a Duramax. Yep. So I get it. Like if you have to, you have to. But I just went through this with Tyler Franzen over at Duramax Tuner. He's working on an LBZ budget build that's going to be out in the work stock sled pulling class. I will actually have some featured interviews from him on the show here in the future. But he actually deleted the fuel filter totally unnecessarily. And he's like, but we got a FAS. And I'm like, but that FAS filter is going to get dirty at some time. Or like even if that FAS filter is a 3-micron filter and the factory fuel filter is after it and it's a larger micron filter, you still have a chance to catch something before your very expensive injectors catch it.
It's company money, man.
It's so not the point. I will kill the next person to say company money to me.
Stop it. All right, Paul.
So that is our do's and don'ts from Exergy. Let's dive into Duramax turbos. And Chris, I think the smart place to start here is with stock turbos.
Yeah. Where to start?
Yeah.
Go on.
Stock turbos. Well, I was just going to say, so quick rundown. When we're talking Duramaxes, maybe for some of our Ford and our Cummins fans out there, we will loop back to those brands in the future.
The Fords are going to be a tough one. There's going to be a lot of learning for me.
I think we're really just going to focus on probably like 6-liter and newer. I'm not going to go back into 7.3s. Yeah. I know there's a couple revisions out there. I do want to talk about 6.4s because it's compound turbochargers, and I get that. And then, of course, 6.7s, we got a couple of revisions there as well of a great idea, and then one that actually fucking works. So anyways, today's Duramax stock turbos, Chris, I'm just going to do a couple of quick rundowns, right? LB7 is a non-variable vane turbo. It's the only Duramax that's a non-variable vane. They're also commonly referred to as the I-high turbos.
IHI, and that's your 01 to early 04.
You got it. Right. Perfect. Yep. With built trans tuning, so about the peak PSI we're going to see out of this peak boost out of this turbo, stock turbo, about 30 PSI. Right. And they are a 59 millimeter inducer wheel.
Yep. And so to all the listeners out there, my truck makes 36 pounds. The turbocharger is going to be most efficient up into that 31, 32. Like it might creep up, creep back down, but that 30, 31, that's the efficiency range as far as boost goes.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything over that, it's hot and efficient air. It's hurting you, not helping you.
Copy that.
So, but yeah, and if it's a stock, no mod turbocharger, generally going to be around 24, 26. For guys that have electric gauges like an edge monitor and you're going off of the factory map sensor, it's only going to read 22 pounds, guys. It's only going to read 22.
And if you call and say that before the tunes it read 26, but now it only reads 22,
I'm sending Paul out for it.
I don't want to argue with you, but you're wrong.
No, but for real.
But for real, it only reads to 22. It's a limit of the ECM. There's nothing we can do about that.
The LLY turbo. So we'll go in. This one is really odd.
This is the unique one.
The LLY. So LLY is a year and a half production, 04.5, 05. It is the biggest, baddest effing turbocharger out of all the Duramax lineups in stock fashion.
True story.
So it is a 63 millimeter inducer. The turbocharger in a max effort scenario, built trans style tuning, it generate like 35, 37 PSI.
Yeah.
Nasty, like bragging rights.
For sure.
You know, I've been around a lot of diesel buddies or car buddies. I call how much boost you're on. Like, F you, this is what I make.
Yeah.
So, again, similar to the LB7, the map sensor, it's only going to go to 22 pounds.
Right.
But it is a variable vane geometry.
This is the
first year of that. So you have these vanes. They work like a clock. They go back and forth, and they open and close, and that changes the aspect ratio, which is the pathway in which exhaust gases travel.
Yeah, aspect ratio, a really simple, dummy way of understanding it. It's the distance between the turbine wheel, so that's the wheel on the back side of the turbo, the distance between that and the exhaust housing. Vanes are little pieces that change that size.
They open and close.
Yeah, exactly.
It's on this little swivel. It's a really cool concept. The technology is that. Think about when that was designed.
Yeah,
when it was released.
So 04 and a half, 05 is when these trucks were out. So you only got a year and a half to get these big framed, large stock turbos. And then you're stuck with an LLY that has a 5-speed. So now you got to do a 6-speed conversion.
Right, of course.
Built trans, blah, blah, blah. You got to do all these things. But still, it was a great turbo, and it was revolutionary for its time.
It was. And those are the biggest, loosest housings.
Yeah.
So the exhaust housing is the biggest. And we'll kind of dive into, drivability and stuff like that.
How that impacts
there's a big thing there. How about the next one?
LBZ and LMM, for consumer purposes, the same turbo. Okay. Yes, there are differences, and JP, maybe you'll be able to speak a little bit to some of those manufacturer differences. But for customers, they're essentially interchangeable.
All three RPOs, for example, LOI, LBZ, LMM.
You can run all three
interchangeable.
Right.
The biggest difference, yes, the LOI is the biggest inducer on the compressor. Mm-hmm. The LBZ and LMMs are a little smaller.
A 61 millimeter
right,
inducer.
And then the LBZ and the LMM gets actually a little tighter in the exhaust housing. As trucks progressed, the exhaust housing gets tighter and tighter, and the vanes become smaller and smaller.
Right.
So a couple little quirks, for the guys buying the turbochargers. Probably not going to make a difference. Me, myself, if I was ever to do like a stocker S400 compound setup and I had an 04.5 to 10 truck, I would have a stock LMM charger on my truck.
A stock LMM?
LMM, because it has the tightest housing. It's going to come to life the quickest.
Yeah, I suppose you're going to pick up your peak power off the 75 anyways, or 80 or whatever you're going to run for the atmosphere.
Pure drivability in a towing scenario,
right.
But it's just really cool to see the turbos, broken down, and you get to see the different, the vanes. There's a night and day difference in size of vanes.
There really is, yeah. And the size of the vanes change throughout the RPOs as well.
Yeah.
Right, JP?
Yes, that's correct. As the emissions standards got more restrictive, the vanes got smaller to aid in that.
Cool.
Okay, absolutely. And then the LML, they're going to come in making about 40 PSI. It's about 39 PSI. Yeah. I believe they have a 60 millimeter inducer. And then the tightest exhaust housing
out of all of them. Yeah.
Out of all of them. It is the fastest spooling charger out of all of the Duramaxes as well. A few other little differences in the LMLs. The exhaust flange is at a slight angle for whatever fucking reason.
It has a wheel speed sensor.
It does have a wheel speed sensor. It's the first time in those. So there's a few little differences. JP, am I missing anything on the stock Duramax turbo applications here?
Just to add about one big difference that the LMLs had in particular is that they added an air temperature sensor as well on the outlet of the turbo.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Okay. Good to know.
And then the LOI through LML are all Garrett-based turbochargers.
All Garrett.
So.
Yep, not iHigh. Yeah, it's good note there. Okay, so that gives you an idea of where we're starting at stock. Now, you're probably only paying attention to the RPO that you're driving.
Yep.
So if you have an LML, you probably don't care what the LB7 stats are. We're going to try to give you guys some general information, and then I think in the future we'll break down some of these turbos and just do a whole episode on just one truck. So we'll just pick LB7, and we'll really drill down deep into it. For today, it's really more about kind of knowing how to compare turbos, because this is something we run into a lot where guys just don't know what's important when they're shopping for a new turbo. A lot of guys don't even know why they want a new turbo. They're just like, well, my wife said I could spend more money on the truck, so I'm going to do it, right? So as we start to compare upgraded turbo options, I've written down a couple of categories that I think are really important. And number one is budget. And Chris, you and I talk about this all the time when we give advice about shopping. I think rule number one is set it and stick to it. So when you set a budget, you set that budget, you make a commitment to that budget. You're not going to go wildly over. You're probably also not going to spend wildly under. You should have an idea of where the market is at when you set the budget.
Yeah, I think, before you can even compare upgraded turbochargers, a step back is what is the goal? Like, what is the truck's use and capability? Like, you have to identify that. Then you look in the market for a price point.
Yeah.
And because the only reason I say that is I've been the guy to call different various vendors and say, hey, this is what I got. This is my horsepower goal. When I had my 01 years ago, 9 years ago, I went through 3 turbos in a summer. Because I'm not going to mention names, but the specific shops that I had called, they were like, oh, this is the best one for the application.
Right.
It was like I was driving a naturally aspirated truck. It was terrible.
Well, I'm going to get into use of the truck here very, very shortly. A couple more things on budget. There's a huge difference between the cheapest and the most expensive.
Absolutely.
Understand that. The most expensive does not mean it's the best, and the cheapest does not mean it's worth your money.
Well, and to touch on, and again, I wasn't trying to get off topic, but to talk about the value of a dollar, you could go buy like an iHire, LLY, or whatever, and just buy an upgraded compressor wheel and housing already machined. What guys don't realize is, you're talking a 150, 200,000 mile truck. You know how many thousands and thousands and hundreds of thousands of millions of RPM that turbo has spun over the years?
That's right.
And then you're going to go and slap a new wheel on and a new cover. That rotating assembly is not balanced.
Well, let's ask somebody who gets to see cores come in of 200, 300, 400,000 mile stock turbos, and when they get torn apart, let's say it's an LB7, you tear apart 10 LB7 cores that come in. How many of them have good center sections, good turbines, and good compressor wheels?
If we were breaking down 10, especially what we've been recently seeing, I would say that particularly with the LB7, we'd have to throw away 3 or 4 of those center sections just because they don't pass initial QC after cleaning. They have the smallest overall bearing diameter, and they're the most likely that I've found, whether it be because of the age or the buyer persona not maintaining them very well, allowing them to wear out and not be usable.
Okay.
Yeah. So 30 to 40% of the cores that come in, just center sections, don't have a center section that is going to pass
Now,
QC.
just to throw another wrench into this, these are turbochargers that when you do get them, they do spin.
Yes, the majority of them do.
So these are takeoffs, first of all.
Right.
This is the guy that's calling, wanting to do a wheel in a housing.
Yeah.
And this is the same guy that a couple thousand miles later, because he wanted to find the deal, now has a turbocharger failure. So you just spent $400 to $600 plus time.
Plus doing it right now once it's
That's
fucked up.
compounded on top of it, so you're spending money twice.
Yeah.
So that's the value of the understanding the cost.
That's it. Go ahead.
There's actually one more additional thing too to take into consideration with a cover swap turbocharger. I have found when we do our 64, which utilizes a stock turbine and stock exhaust housing, I have to balance those stock turbines by themselves, and those are out of balance coming out of those turbochargers, which means even if the manufacturer says the wheel is balanced, they may not. That doesn't guarantee that when you get it assembled that it wouldn't be the problem, that it wouldn't.
I hear you. I think what you're saying is if you would never know, as a consumer at home, you would never know that your stock turbine was out of balance. So you're going and spending $400-$600. You're doing all this work, which it's Duramax, so everything you touch on, it's a pain in the ass. So you spend all this time, and then at the end of the day, you still have a turbo that's out of balance.
Right.
That's a terrible plan start to finish. Also, I think one of the things guys forget is you shop for a turbo and the cost of installation, whether you're paying labor of somebody to do it or the install kit. Like how many $750 turbos have we seen that take a $1,800, $2,200 install kit?
Every S300, years ago, S366 is super popular. I get the turbo, $700. Yeah, but the install kit's $3,000.
Right. So by the time you're done, it's like you were closer to just paying for twins and having a way happier time driving the truck. So yeah, gaskets. That's the other one. I think everybody forgets. You pull a turbo off, just be smart. Plan on doing gaskets.
Yep.
They're never included, but you always need them.
Mm-hmm.
Is my kind of rule of thumb for that. Okay, use of truck. Chris, you were hitting on this, I think, really, really well, and I didn't mean to break your stride on that.
No,
but,
not at all.
But drivability. To me, drivability is spool up, right? It's that low-end response of I stand on the throttle, the truck moves, and I need the charger to come up on boost to make the truck move. So it all kind of ties in to me together. How do you think of drivability?
There's a few things, a couple key aspects, and I feel like I just regurgitate the same things over and repeat myself, but until you actually experience it, it's your own vehicle, or you really have some seat time behind a vehicle, you really start to understand the drivability.
Yeah.
Now, for you, Paul, you mentioned spool up. Yes, big aspect. Spool up, how that turbocharger comes into motion, plays a really big role. How that turbocharger comes into motion and how aggressive it comes into motion. So the laggier the turbo down low, once it comes into motion, it's going to come in heavy and hard.
Yeah.
For a daily driven scenario, that's not necessarily the best fit. Same thing with the wheel that all plays role in wheel diameter, exhaust housing aspect ratios, and just allowing the two to be a perfect match in a pair. So when guys call in, for an example, and they're like, hey, I got an LB7, right? And I looked at your 67, okay, one of the turbos that Duramax tuner recently released. I'm stock motor, stock injector, yada, yada, yada. I use the truck to tow. That customer has already validated that, hey, it's a daily driven truck. I tow with it regularly. It needs to manage EGTs. It needs to be reliable. And my wife drives it from time to time. The 67 is not the turbo for that customer.
No.
Okay. Now we're looking back on the Stealth 64 or the G2, depending on, again, some more detailed questions. So understanding, it's my weekend warrior, I don't tow, I want to grow to X horsepower. Well, now we can start talking about some bigger frame turbochargers.
Right.
But, for the average guy, I would say a majority of the customer base that, we work with, these are trucks that guys are using them for work. They want to have play on the weekends. They want to use them for work during the week. It's their family vehicle, their hot rod it's their all-in-one. So you have to be able to better match that, and that's, some guys are like, you're asking a lot of questions. Well, I'm helping you not make a couple $1,000 mistake. So identify what you're after. So when you do call into various shops, you give them some type of guideline to work off of.
Yeah, if it's a sled pull truck, have the rules ready.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
'Cause you're going to have rules around what the turbo is, and then you can get the right turbo spec'd out. If, like, you kind of mentioned everything there that, if know how you use the truck, right? And then we'll help you find a turbo that matches that use. It's not the other way around. It's not, I want an S475 single because my buddy said I could tow with it. It's like, hold on. Yeah. Is towing your priority, or is the same turbo that your buddy has your priority?
Well,
like,
I think
it's clearly it should be towing, right? Or how you use the truck should be the most important thing. So we do try to pull that out of people. One of the other things I think guys really need to clamp down and keep in mind is, what else do I need? Like, if I'm going to run this turbo, what's the supporting mods? Do I need a custom intake? Yeah. Do I need again, the whole install kit? But like, can I run 45, 50 PSI with stock up pipes on my 200,000 mile LB7? Look at LMLs, we've seen it, right?
Yeah, like, these are all the questions that you call into a shop that understands and specializes in this, and you tell them a power goal. Most of these shops, they're going to be able to steer you in the right direction of, hey, this is what you need, A, B, C, D, E, F, probably H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P. It just goes on and on. But you have to have an understanding of the goal. And another thing with the drivability is, like you said, 475, right? I don't know how many 475 or bigger S300 frame trucks that you've driven. I know you've driven a fair amount being at the shop.
Sure.
But, the turbocharger isn't completely laggy. Okay, well, there's dead spots because the truck clicks first, second, third, fourth, converter lockup. Charger falls flat on its face because of the RPM drop.
Yep.
The only time that truck's going to be fun to drive is wide open throttle. Otherwise, you have to learn how to drive around the turbocharger. So when I talk to guys, I'm like, you have to relearn your driving style, drive around the turbo. They never understand because, again, they haven't experienced it.
Right.
And when you explain it like that, it makes a little bit more sense. But at the end of the day, you have to experience it firsthand.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, I never understood what the problem was. Like, to me, it sounded like a great deal. Yeah. It's a 75 millimeter turbo and your stock one's 60. Yeah. Duh.
All the air.
Which one do I want, right?
And that's just the inducer of the compressor, which it makes it. There is a lot of drivability scenarios there, but all of the goodies are in the back end.
Yeah.
What size the turbine, the housing, that kind of thing.
Even something I think we're starting to learn here, I think we've started to prove here, and JP, you could probably speak a little bit more to this, is your inducer measurement is one measurement of many when it comes down to designing just that wheel. If we're just talking about compressor wheel to compressor wheel, I could have the same inducer and same exducer, but two totally different wheels side by side.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. A good example of that's our 64 whole set and our 64 Duramax options. The height of the wheels is very obvious, even though the inducer diameter is the same.
Okay. Right. So by height, what do you mean there?
If you place the wheel on a table from where the back of the wheel bolts up to the shaft to the top part of the wheel where the nut secures it onto the shaft.
It's almost like you're trying to describe a three-dimensional object with more than one dimension, which is what we're talking about here, right? Is like it's a three-dimensional object. So if you really want to know how that turbo is going to work, you would really need all three dimensions. And that is why we see the 351, 341s make so much more peak power than we do out of the Duramax side.
Yeah,
well,
I think,
one of the reasons I think we can agree. It is a larger.
That's a whole nother episode.
Compressor wheel.
That's a whole nother episode. But there is a lot of truth there.
Yeah.
I couldn't agree more. But you could also take two turbochargers. We'll just stick with LB7, 1 RPO to keep it simple, and take the same compressor wheel, inducer, exducer, but run two different turbine sizes, and that's a night and day difference
Totally
to make
change
completely
everything.
different power levels. And to some degree, you could hinder drivability or not necessarily hinder drivability depending on the combination.
Yep.
So
Absolutely.
there's a lot there. When guys call in, I can't stress this enough. Oh, well, I'm going to buy this 63. I'm going to buy that 63. Well, those are nowhere near the same. There's no similarities. Well, they're both 63 millimeters. You got to understand the dynamics of all the measurements.
Right. It's like saying they're both Duramaxes when you're talking about an LB7 and an LML.
Yeah. No, yeah. They are both. They're 6.6s, man.
Right.
I don't know.
Right. Yeah.
For sure.
Try swapping those turbos. All right, guys.
I'll pay you.
So we've hit around everything, right? Budget, use of truck, supporting mods. That's the episode. Thanks for listening. Have a great night. No, I'm just kidding. Peak power. And I put this one last in the outline today, Chris, because I feel like it's always the first thing we talk about with customers.
Oh, it is.
And when we talk about use of the truck, it comes up. When we talk about budget, it comes up. When we talk about supporting mods, it comes up. People want to know how much power can this turbo make. And I guess my reality for people is like, this turbo does have a peak power limit, but your truck has another limit that we probably should discuss as well. Because if I sell you an LB7 67 G2 that's capable of 800 horsepower and you have 100% over injectors and a stock CP3 and a stock transmission, you do not have an 800 horsepower truck. You just
stock
don't.
Bottom end, stock head. I mean,
Not even getting to it lasting,
right.
just making the number, right? Is like you don't have an 800 horsepower truck.
But again, that's where you ask the questions. That's where, again, guys, I mean, I've literally had guys call in. They're like, no disrespect towards these guys. I've been there before.
Sure.
I want this turbo. Well, it's probably not the best for your setup.
Yeah.
Well, I'm ready to buy. I want it. And it's like, I don't want to take your money because there's going to be a support afterwards. Because I think at the end all be all, the customer's always right. Okay, what they want is what they want, and it's their money. But if I can do anything in my power to help educate, for a better investment, for like you said, if you're a stock transmission and you're 300,000 mile truck, stock truck, and your turbo blew up, you do not go into a 67.
No. And even the guys who are maybe a few stages past that, you do also got to think how often, let's say you sled pull a few times a year, or when you go to the local county fair every year, you always enter the sled pulls. I wouldn't coach you into going to getting a 2.5 charger.
No.
Right? Yeah, you do sled pull a few times. If it's not a dedicated sled pull truck, I wouldn't have you build anything past the work stock class because, to be honest with you, you have all these crazy rules of non-drivable turbos, or I shouldn't say non-drivable. Turbos you probably don't have good what we call street manners.
Or you'd want to tow with.
Yeah. These are not chargers that are designed for that purpose. So you really got to think not just, do I want to make this power number, this 800, this 700, this 600, whatever? You think, how often am I going to make that number, right? Because I have had guys who are looking at an S475 and an S366 SXE, and they're like, well, the S475 is going to make more power, and I can get away with pulling that in my sled pull class. It's like, okay, but you're only pulling 3 times a year. You drive this truck every day. Go with the S366. Like, it's going to be a way better. Who cares if you don't win that pull once a year and get a blue ribbon?
A blue ribbon.
Like, who gives a shit?
And $50.
The payout's not enough to cover your fuel to go to it.
No.
So be smart. Think about, how often am I competing? How often am I driving? What am I going to set up to kind of make that balance work?
Yeah.
I think that's a good place to start. I did just make a post on Duramax Tuner where I posted a picture. I just said, hey guys, if you're thinking about a new turbo, does spool up or peak power matter more? overwhelmingly people reply spool up, but yet when I read comments with questions about our turbos, or I pick up phones and I answer phones, we always talk more about peak power than we do on spool up. So it's like, I'm having a hard time placing a great analogy on this. It'd be like somebody saying, hey, did you know smoking's bad for you while you're lighting a cigarette? Like, well, yeah, I knew that, right? I could tell you that, but there's a difference of me actually acting on it. And that's what we do want to kind of remind people is peak power is important, man. If you're making an 800 horsepower truck, you don't want to go with a 63 millimeter inducer because there's like just such a small chance that you're actually going to make the number, right? Like unless we're building, again, an all-out pull truck. So we do want you to get to that peak power goal. We're not telling you ignore all of your goals. Power isn't good. We love power. We're just saying you got to kind of put all of these together. You got to look at the budget. You got to look at the use of truck. You got to look at the supporting mods, and you got to look at the peak power. They're all equally important. It's not one is more important than the other.
Yep.
Right? Hey, before we dive into some possible routes that guys can go, now that we've kind of talked about the chargers, we've talked about how to compare different turbo upgrades, we're actually going to get into some specifics about these are your potential options. You could go with these routes. First, I just want to do a quick shout for WC Fab's From Facebook segment. WC Fab, of course, if you're looking for S300, S400 install kits, twin turbo kits, traction bars, powder coating, or CP3 conversion kits for the LML, they are the U.S.'s premier fab shop in the Duramax and Cummins world. We really, again, another group of guys that we just can't say enough good about. I think we're all consider ourselves personal friends with Jason Worley over there and the rest of the crew and Ryan and the rest of the Worley family. They really are just great guys to work with. So if you have a chance or you're looking for some upgrades for your truck, check out WCFab.com. Today's response, today's Facebook question comes from Tanner Howard.
Clear your breath. Clear your voice. Throat. There you go. Go. You're a little froggy.
Good call. All right. Hey, guys. So I was doing some work with tightening some fittings on my CP3 due to a minor leak at the FPR, and I noticed the driver's side fuel rail, 2 CP3 high-pressure lines, was stripped out and won't get tight. I know I'm going to have to replace this, but my question is, would I see any gains going with a ported fuel rail fitting, or just go back to stock bore fittings? Thanks, guys.
I'm going to get a lot of flack with what I'm about to say.
I really don't know what you're going to say. Let's hear it.
Dude, put the stock bore fittings back on.
I
save your money.
I really thought you were going to go the other way on this one.
Guys, call in. Guys, I love all my customers, right? Like short fuse, not short fuse. I don't give a shit. But when you're telling me your mod list and you're like, yeah, I have this. I got ported fuel rail fittings. I got the relief valve, shim, whatever. What kind of power am I going to make? And it's like, you tell them, but I have ported fuel rail fittings. You know what, man? Screw me. You're right. You have 100 horse more there.
We have an old coworker who's no longer here who told me that he was dropping rail pressure, so he put in ported fuel rail fittings and it fixed it.
Yeah. I had no comment.
Yeah.
Our Duraburb, perfect example. DuramaxTuner.com, Duraburb. We've done a drive along. You've seen the video.
I love that truck.
Just shy of 1,100 wheel, conservatively. Stock rails, no ported fuel fitting BS, stock.
Yeah, think this one through, guys. And no offense against you, Tanner, because we get this question all the time, which is why you can hear the frustration in our voice with it. The common rail holds fuel right before the injectors and after the CP3. The amount of fuel that's pumped through, even a CP 4.2, 30,000 PSI, plenty of volume. An older CP3, any of the older trucks, you're still talking about 26,000 pounds per square inch, PSI. That's a lot of fucking pressure, okay? And now you're thinking that if you increase the volume of space inside of that rail between the CP3 and the injectors, that will somehow make an impact. But there's no control through that path. No. There's no electronics in that path. You're not making more rail pressure. You're not sending more fuel to the injectors because the injectors are getting the amount of fuel based on pressure and time. So the amount of pressure that is sent to them and the time that they are open, that's how it decides. You could put a 5-gallon bucket above there and it'd still be the CP3 and the injector deciding how much fuel gets sprayed into the combustion cycle. So in other words, at the end of the day, ported fuel rail fittings, no benefits.
No dice.
But great question.
Save your money.
Also, If you have questions about your truck, about a performance upgrade you've been thinking of, or if you just want to shoot in a message and say hi to Chris or myself, please feel free. Reach us on Facebook at Diesel Performance Podcast, or you can email Chris. Go ahead.
Yeah. So it's C. Emke. I got shafted. I don't get the Chris at DuramaxTuner.com. That was taken. So it's C as in Chris, and then my last name. So E as in Echo, H as in Hotel, M as in Mike, K as in Kilo, E as in Echo, at DuramaxTuner.com.
And I was the first Paul here, so I'm just Paul at DuramaxTuner.com.
And after the hire, he will be the last.
I will be the last. There can be only one.
There will be only one. God, I hate you.
JP, we're now going to talk about possible routes guys can go. Okay, and I brought you into today's episode for this first one because you obviously just know a ton about them, and that's our Stealth Series turbos. These are drop-in turbos, and they fit all of the Duramaxes. We have models for the iHigh or for the LB7, all the VVTs, and of course the LMLs as well. Tell me a little bit about the drop-in 64s for the Duramaxes. What are you really proud of in those turbos?
So the initial and most easy part to describe and quantify on for the 64 series turbochargers is that when we bring them in, tear them down, clean them up, is that we automatically put a brand new kit in them that covers all of the possible bearings and all of the possible sealing surfaces for it. It also includes a couple upgrades, like a 360-degree thrust bearing, and where applicable, O-rings for the compressor housing. For example, in the iHighs, which from the factory come with an RTV sealant that seals them.
So you get a complete kit to completely rebuild them. And then you put that kit in, and then you throw in a couple of parts that are unique to the 64.
Yes, we have a custom spec'd turbine for the majority of the 64 lineup that we have tested and retested to make sure that we get the optimal performance out of them, and a custom spec'd wheel, which is also machined from a solid piece of billet aluminum that we are the only ones to have.
So we have a unique turbine wheel. We have a unique compressor wheel. We have a completely rebuilt turbo that's all cleaned and polished and sandblasted and cleaned and polished and sandblasted again. It's all assembled. It all gets QC'd by you.
Yes, that was the second part of the setup. That's a little bit harder to quantify, although every single customer that takes delivery of one of our turbochargers has a balance sheet that describes how far out of imbalance that turbine is, and the specification written out to give a level of accountability to make sure that every single turbo leaves with a certain level of quality, and anywhere from a 25 to 45 point inspection list, which I personally do, going one by one down, and some of those turbos could take me up to 20 minutes to inspect each, which in some cases is almost as long as it takes to build them to ensure the quality.
I love it. It is. It's like we said at the beginning, an almost annoying level of passion, but not quite annoying.
I refer to it as tweaker.
Yeah. we can count on JP. No question there. Now, the 67 line follows a similar path, but it's the largest drop-ins available on the market, to my understanding.
There are bigger drop-ins, but from what we have tested, I think that the 67 has made somewhat the highest power.
Gotcha.
So
we probably, from what we've tested and seen as well, it seems like we spend the most time on our exhaust housing, which is the least glamorous part of the turbocharger.
Right.
But
the porting and opening that up.
Yep, and making sure that how we're cutting it, not just the porting and making it big for the sake of big, but we pay attention to things like how the downpipe interfaces with the exducer of the turbine, which is the outlet of it, to make sure that we don't have any negative flow impacts, because just because it's big,
Yep.
if it's big into a dead wall,
Yep.
it's going to cause turbulence. Yep.
Okay, awesome. Now, also with the 67s on the iHigh, they have a custom compressor cover to basically help with spool up. It's an anti-surge design that'll also help with spool up. And then on the VVTs, the turbine side gets a lot of love. So walk me through some of the VVT turbine kind of unique quirks.
So with the VVT 67 in particular, we've got a lot of custom parts that a 64 doesn't get, mostly because we don't need that kind of flow with the compressor wheel that we're using on the 64, but also with the turbine housing. So the simplest and most easy to tell is if you look through the exhaust inlet ports, you'll see very shiny stainless steel looking vanes and rings. That's a custom vane pack. That would be the vane and the rings that we get specced out and custom built just for us with our proprietary measurements. We also increase the diameter of that ring to increase the flow of the turbine housing. That helps us break past the limitations of the factory turbine housing.
Now, VVTs are traditionally known to not make as much power as a non-VVT turbo. This is something that I think we've all have heard from customers and run into on the dyno as well. But you're saying that the unison ring and the custom vanes, which are up to 53% larger than stock vanes, they're really what help with being able to get that peak power out of these variable vanes because they are 800 horsepower capable.
Yeah, absolutely. What we ran into was that as we increased the size of the turbine wheel, we began having issues with a possible contact with those vanes in the factory location. So we go as far as knocking out all of the dowels, machining that face where the dowels are, and increasing the diameter to allow us to fit that larger turbine.
To allow us to fit the largest turbine found in any VVT Duramax turbo.
Correct.
Awesome. Cool, man. So that's the 67 lineup and the 64 lineup, the Stealths. Like I said, they cover all the way 01 to 16 Duramaxes. They're available on the shelf, ready to ship. Of course, you guys know that. There are also the S300, S400 installs, and this is where I think Worley probably has a lot of experience considering he builds those awesome kits for them.
He does.
Traditionally, I think in this shop, we've mostly been pushed away from the S300, S400s, not necessarily just because they compete with the Stealth Series turbos, but because we're just not huge fans of some of those factors, like the drivability and the spool up, like the EGT control. We've seen a lot of guys get these chargers, go through a very expensive and laborsome install, and then not love their truck. Yep. And as tuners, we've spent over 10 years now trying to fix that drivability. Borg Warner's new SXE line seems to be a huge improvement. So the S300 guys, I think the 69 SXE is getting really popular out there.
They drive really well. Again, turbine profile, sizing, how it matches the exhaust housing. They've done a great job. They drive halfway decent for a fixed vane charger.
Yeah.
But you still have the cost perspective there. You know, a lot of guys, what I run into a lot with guys is they're like, okay, well, I want to make, X power now, but I want the ability to grow. Okay. So you go buy the S300 kit, you spend a good amount of money on an S300 kit. Then you want to compound over that in the future, and all the piping's got to be redone. You're spending money twice.
Yeah.
Versus you can go with a VVT, drop it in, compound over that down the road, buy the turbo kit once. You're going to be right in the same ballpark at that point. You'll be cheaper. You know?
And the turbo kit, just the twin turbo kit itself is cheaper.
Right.
When you're just doing a stocker. Because it goes off a stocker
and
kit.
Again, as technology advances, the VVT world, like we were just talking about, the power potential is there as a single and in a compound application. Years ago, I got a 4094 475 or a 4094 480. They made power on some dynos, but when we would get the trucks here, again, just controlling it in one aspect, whether Duramax tuner is tuning the truck or not.
Right.
Okay. The power numbers seemed fairly consistent. Now we can go with the technology, put a smaller turbo in the valley, put a bigger turbo as the atmospheric or a similar size turbo, have a really drivable, utilizable truck and make 4-digit numbers.
Yeah.
So
and those are really your three options. So it's drop-ins, S300, S400s, or compounds.
Or triples.
Well, compounds I consider with triples because you're compounding 3 chargers, right?
True.
So twins or triples.
Yeah.
But which are applicable. We're huge fans of twin turbo setups. Triple turbo setups I think are for a very specific set of guys who really want something that looks amazing when they pop the hood, something that's really eye-catching, and also we have seen something that can make huge power.
Yeah.
So it is a good way to break up a 1,000 horsepower build into something that could be more drivable. We're seeing guys at that 1,500, 1,600 horsepower range, and Probably not driving them every day, but still able to take them out, and you be on the street with them.
You're learning how to drive the truck again, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But anything's possible if you put your mind to it.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Chris, I wanted to give you a shout out. We're working on a new vlog series with you, a new video series with you. You're going to be doing some ride-alongs in some different trucks.
Yeah, we're going to start the 15 twin turbo Ram. We have a couple other Rams that we're going to be doing some driving, some filming. Basically, just going through the ins and outs, taking stock trucks, reviewing them. Okay, this is what I've seen. This is what I expect. Just real world characteristics. Maybe someone's going to buy a truck. We get a lot of guys that call in at the shop like, oh, well, what would you buy? And it's like, man, I don't want to get into this right now. But I just want to give some real world experience and being able to see whether it's facial expressions, RPM, vehicle speed on the dash, whatever the case may be, just some real world, in the seat, this is what to expect. So we have a plethora of vehicles in the lineup right now. Everything from 2.8, we did a ride along, on this, like we were talking about earlier in the BMW, but a lot of different trucks, not just Dodges, which is my specialty. There'll be some Fords, there'll be some Duramaxes. I mean, even, L5Ps, they're not tunable still, but you know what? I'm going to
Got to get a stock baseline.
Yeah, I want to review it. So I'm really excited. This is something that you and I have been talking about behind the scenes for a couple months now.
Sure.
I procrastinate. I know that. And there comes a point where I just get sick of hearing you and I have to bite the bullet and do it.
That's it.
So, we've been doing some of that and we've had a couple edits. Real world, I'm not perfect. Never would claim to be. We had to scrap a couple and implement a couple new ones.
Yeah,
but,
there was one intro that we threw away because it was just it was a little dry.
Hey,
Listen,
live and learn.
We as a team, whether it's on the podcast at Duramax Tuner, at Calibrated Power, we as a team like to try to provide the absolute best that we can, whether that's tuning, turbos, or just our media. We really do try to hold ourselves to a high standard. So keep an eye out for those. Those are going to be coming up on the Calibrated Power YouTube channel, and they'll also be featured on the Facebook pages for Duramax Tuner and Calibrated Power. It's probably going to be a monthly series, so once a month. So Chris is going to try to shoot for the first 5 trucks this year, and we'll see how 2019 looks for that. For me, I am really proud of Diesel Tuner's blog. Our guy over at Duramax Tuner, Justin Tyson, has been working really hard authoring some blogs here over the last 2 to 3 months. I've been really impressed with his writing skills. If you like to read about diesel stuff, we're never going to be claimed to be as good as somebody amazing like Diesel Power Magazine, but we do write about very specific, very niche things that pertain to us. So we try to, again, give you guys the absolute best content we can. If you're looking to learn more about diesels, whether it's in general or something very, very specific, check out dieseltunersblog.com. Mr. Send It Studios, JP, what do you want to plug, bud?
I would like to plug just the guys with the new turbo studio that we've been working on back there, and appreciating the hard work that our machinist and all of the other techs that we have going back there, and all the late nights from the assemblers, and appreciating us running hard and making this program grow exponentially in the last couple months.
I know all them jokers. Fuck them. Yeah. No, I'm just playing. They're all great guys. They're all great. We really appreciate them.
I come from an only child family, right? I'm an only child. I'm selfish as shit. But it is nice, it is what it is, but, it's a group effort, from what they do to what you do, unfortunately, which I don't respect, but it is what it is. No, I'm just joking. Before this interview, I was dead tired on the floor. I don't know why. It's 110 degrees outside. It's cold as hell in here, and you got me pumped up to do this.
That's it, man.
It's just relying on your coworkers, friends, we're here enough. It's basically family. So.
Well, that's awesome. Well, guys, that's it for us today. This has been Paul Wilson.
Chris Emke.
Jean-Paul Vaillant.
Thanks for listening.
The Diesel Performance Podcast is brought to you by Calibrated Power Solutions, home of DuramaxTuner.com. Calibrated Power develops emissions-equipped calibrations for a wide variety of diesel powertrains, including Duramax, Cummins, Power Stroke, John Deere, Case, New Holland, and many more. For more information and the best customer service in the industry, check out calibratedpower.com or call 815-568-7920. That's 815-568-7920. If you'd like to contact the podcast, send us a message through Facebook or email Paul at DuramaxTuner.com or Chris at CEHMKE@DuramaxTuner.com. Hey, thanks for listening. Your feedback is appreciated. Please rate and review us on iTunes, subscribe on YouTube, like us on Facebook, and by all means, let us know if you have any ideas for a podcast. We'd love to hear from you.
You name your trucks.
I do.
Yep.
Let's hear them.
So one is not so embarrassing. The F-250, which is a 1995, I named that Louis.
And it looks like a Louis.
No
It's a
particular
guy's
reason.
name?
Louis.
You named your truck after a guy?
All my diesel trucks are going to be guys.
So you
till the day
ride-
I
Because they
die.
work hard.
Okay.
All
I
my
had a
diesel
couple other
trucks.
ways to go with this, like, so you ride
Well,
guys.
this is a family
but I get
show.
it. Yeah. No, I didn't go there. I didn't go there. I said I was going to, but I didn't.
I know, because it's a family show.